Good Monday morning, everyone. It is Monday. We're going to have a great day. Talking today about on Thoughts from the Car, because that's where we are, is that we're talking about the importance of indulgences in our life. I've talked about pleasure before and like why, we should have more pleasure in our life, but I really want to talk about the importance of it, and how we can go about doing it to avoid the dangers in our life, and like why we need those indulgences in our life beyond just we want to be happy, right? So first, I think the first thing that we need to talk about is what is the actual reason, like what gets fed by these indulgences that we have. And I think we do that by explaining the three egos. So it's kind of a Freudian thing, a psychological thing where there's this idea that there are three egos that we have: the id, the ego, and the superego. So the id ego is like the devil on our shoulder who just wants pleasure all the time. It is fed by reward. It's the one that doesn't have moderation. It just wants happiness and joy and pleasure and rewards all the time. It's the one that wants to do what it wants to do when it wants to do it without any cares for what anybody else wants, right? That's the id. That's the little devil on our shoulder telling us, go do the thing, go do the thing, go do the thing, right? That we know sometimes we're not supposed to do. Then there's the superego. The superego is like the little angel. They require perfection. They want us to be seen well in society. There are the protector. They're the one who, the superego, they are always about doing the right thing, right? And they tend to make us overthink when we are living in that ego, the superego. Then there's the balanced ego, which is the ego that we like, our wise mind, right? It's a balance of both. So the ego is in the middle. And some egos are better than others based on traumatic experiences in our life and whether they are more influenced by id or superego. Okay. It's the should versus want. And it's not about working hard and playing harder. That gives us the balance, but about a give and take. So there's kind of a different thought when we're actually in our ego, which a lot of times ego gets the bad rap, right? Like we hear that all the time, is don't live from your ego. But ego is there to actually protect us. And also that's the super ego tries to protect us. But our middle of the road ego is also there to protect us. It's to protect us with both the give and take that is needed, the middle road, that balance between doing what we need to do and also getting what we want, right? Because we shouldn't just be doing all the things that everybody else needs and not caring about self. We do need to care about self. In fact, we need to care about self first as a priority so that we can take care of others and that we can give what is needed and provide what is needed for others. You have to have love for yourself first before you can properly love others. And so that's what ego does. It's that middle of the road, give and take, not overindulging, but allowing yourself indulgence and pleasure so that you're not going through I can't say the word. You're not depriving yourself. Deprecate. I can't say the word this morning. It's Monday. All right. So we're going to pretend that didn't happen. But basically it's that you don't want to deprive yourself, because when you deprive yourself, you fall into id, and then it's very easy to fall into that. And id just wants a reward. It doesn't care what reward it is. It just wants to be rewarded. So an example of how we feed id with reward that it needs so that we're more balanced in our ego and we're not falling into super ego either. If you are dieting, okay, you're dieting, you're on a diet and you have like this weight loss goal for yourself. A small indulgence to help reward ourselves would not be when we hit we lost 10 pounds thing to go out and eat a donut. Like, I know that's what a lot of people say, like the cheat meal or whatever, because you're depriving yourself. But instead, what a healthier alternative to do that actually still feeds the id, rewards the id, is maybe going out and buy a new pair of running shoes or tennis shoes. Or when I lost like a ton of weight, one of the things I got was a Fitbit. It was one of the things that I kind of rewarded myself when I hit like a certain weight loss goal. So it's like feeding into my goal rather than going against my goal, because it just kind of, it reinforces the bad habits that I'm trying to break in the dieting and trying to eat and exercise and live a healthier life, right? Another example of this would be if you're trying to save money. Like maybe you're a spender and you just always spend money and you don't save your money. A reward, something that would not be a good reward if you're saving your money, is because you need to save and like you have a very bad spending habit, is to not go into your savings account and buying like a big trip somewhere if you need to save your money for a down payment for a house, because that's what you need to do for yourself. Like that's a habit you're trying to change, is to not always be spending money. But a good reward then could be is if you hit a certain goal in your savings account, or you have overcome and not bought the coffee every day at work, on your way to work, and you're saving money that way, is to maybe just go buy a donut once a week, right? Like instead of buying the coffee every day, you know, or taking yourself out to a nice dinner, not necessarily going on a trip, taking the money out of the savings account, like something that's affordable, like going out and getting a donut, you know? So instead of the dieting for the donut, we are buying the shoes, and instead of buying the, you know, $1,000 shoes or going on the trip that you really want to go on and taking money out of your savings, you go buy the 59-cent donut. So you see the difference? Like you don't want to do the thing that's reinforcing the bad habit, because that just feeds the ego in a bad way, in a way that it does not want to be fed, because it gets confused. It's like, wait, I thought we were doing this thing to help me, and now we're doing this other thing that is what the old habit used to be. It just gets confused. And like I said, the id just wants the reward. It doesn't care what the reward is. So if we choose a reward that is not depriving us from that joy feeling, that pleasure feeling, that dopamine hit, it gets fed. And superego also gets fed, which is what they both need, right? So we're not depriving ourselves. Okay, so what are the positive impacts? Because like, why are we doing this? Like, why do we need to think about pleasure? Like, why do we need to think about indulgences? Because, you know, I don't know about you, but, and I've talked about this before, but the idea of pleasure and indulging oneself was kind of like something we didn't do. Like it wasn't okay, you know, it was just this thing that other people did, and it was almost like frowned upon, is the way that I kind of grew up. And even as a young adult, like, yeah, that's great for that person, but we need to remain steadfast. And that's kind of how I operated as an adult for the longest time, partly because of like financial stuff, of not being able to do those indulgences. So there was a lot of like guilt and shame with it. But then also, I think just in society, when we see someone indulging in something, we judge it. We judge it very harshly, because we don't understand it. We're not that person, and we don't understand what they're doing, right? And we get jealous and envious of that indulgence that the person is having, instead of just celebrating them and allowing them to have their indulgences, and doing our own indulgences so that we aren't jealous and judging everybody else's indulgences. Okay, so the positive impacts of indulging, okay, and rewarding ourselves is it boosts our self-esteem. This is helpful in, it makes us feel value for ourselves. You know, if you are working day in and day out, and you're just, you know, it's difficult sometimes where the economy is in a weird place and it feels bad to go indulge in something. The thing is we don't have to indulge in super expensive things. There are small ways we can indulge. We can do lots of things that don't even cost any money to indulge with ourselves. It's not always about money. It's not always about going and buying things and spending what we don't have. That's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm telling you to do is do things that are going to boost your self-esteem, that are going to make you feel valued, because that's one of the positive impacts, is when we do indulge, when we do bring pleasure for ourselves, we feel better about ourselves. It also helps us reduce our self-criticism, that it's okay to enjoy life. I don't know where we got this idea that we just have to suffer. I don't know where necessarily that came from for myself. I mean, I have ideas, but I don't want to play the blame game. But there was this idea in my head that I couldn't enjoy life. Like, I was here to just serve others and not enjoy my own life and not indulge and not have pleasure. Like, it's just crazy how we so easily can fall into that because we're trying to be so good. That super ego gets in the way of, we're just trying to do the right thing. And then we forget that sometimes the right thing is indulging, is bringing pleasure for yourself. And we have to get over that. We have to be okay with the idea that pleasure is not a bad thing. Okay, it improves our self-image. So when we are indulging in things for ourselves, it helps us think better about ourselves. That boosts the self-esteem. It makes us feel like we deserve it, because we do. We work hard. I work hard. I deserve an indulgence now and again. And that's the key, is that it's moderation. It's about now and again. It's not every day. It's not every week. It's not, every couple of days. The indulgence of, as example, going out to eat, that's an indulgence. That's not an everyday thing. That's not a several times a week thing. I mean, if you can afford it, great. But if that's not something you can afford to do on a regular basis, it's an indulgence. It's something that you use as a reward for, a good thing. Like, you work towards that thing. It's not an everyday thing. But it helps us improve ourselves to know that we deserve it. It makes it more special when we have something that we actually indulge in. It brings more self-confidence. When we have self-confidence, it reinforces the belief that we are worthy of good and amazing things. And so often in our life, we are criticized by others and society because of the way we look or the way we live or our beliefs. When we have self-confidence, it helps us reinforce the belief that we have value and we have worth, and that we don't have to do what everybody else is doing. We can be our own individual self. We can be more authentic, and it gives us more confidence to be able to do that when we're giving small self-indulgences and having pleasure in our life and not being afraid of pleasure, not running from pleasure, and allowing the ego, the equal balanced ego, to have a reward, to feel good about itself, and to not squash it all the time and think, well, I can't do that because that's selfish, and that's not being selfless. Sometimes one of the most selfless things we can do is to actually love ourselves and do something nice for ourselves, because then the overflow of self-love goes into love to others. And it has taken me so long in my life to figure that out and find that balance. And does it mean you're gonna mess up? Yeah, sometimes you are, because guess what? You're human. You're gonna mess up. But for us to just completely remove pleasure and indulgences in our life is not the answer. It's not how we're going to find the balance, because then we deprive ourselves. Self-deprecation. Ooh, I said the word right. Self-deprecation is not the answer to having a more balanced life, to try to do things to love others. That is not going to help love others better. I'm on my soapbox today. Excuse that. Okay, so what are some ideas, right? What are some ideas to get these positive impacts, to actually self-indulge? I think the first thing that we have to remember is that when we're doing these things, we're not to use them to compensate for negative feelings that we have, right? Like, we're not trying to compensate for things that are really hard in our life and that we just can't deal with because we're not sitting with our feelings and not doing the things that we need to do in order to keep ourselves in a healthy emotional state. So there's that caveat. But here are some ideas, okay? Remember, I said it doesn't always have to be about money. Sometimes it's like going for a walk, taking a short hike, listening to music, reading a book, spending time with a friend, exercising. These are indulgences. These are not have to do things. These are things that we get to do. And I think that when we shift that, when we reframe things from I have to do this to I get to do this, it makes things so much more pleasurable in our life. Some other ideas is eating a snack or treat that we like. And again, it's all about moderation. Maybe it's one piece of dark chocolate. Maybe it's our favorite coffee or tea that we only have as a reward, right? It's not something that we have every day, so it's not the, caramel macchiato that has 1,000,000 calories and costs $7 every single time you get it. It's something you get like once a month as a reward for, meeting a goal that you have for yourself. You're indulging in it. You're allowing the ego to receive the reward that it needs in order to find the balance. You're not depriving yourself from the caramel macchiatos, but you're also not getting them once a week or 3 times a week or every day, right? So it's finding that balance again. A bath with Epsom salts, right? So when we indulge in these activities that bring us pleasure, taking that Epsom salt bath or that oil bath or that bubble bath, and you're not doing it every day, it feels like a luxury. It feels like an indulgence. It feels like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. And it doesn't become commonplace, and the ego gets fed in the reward center of our brain in a good, positive way. Try a new hobby. Sometimes we want like adventure, right? Like that's the thing that ego wants. That's the reward, is trying something new. So like trying a new hobby, or, going someplace that we've never gone before and exploring, doing something that we don't get to do all the time. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to indulge. Indulgence means every so often. It does not mean all the time. It's not commonplace. Going to our favorite place for dinner is a great thing. So that's, again, it's not common. We don't go there once a week. We don't go there every day. It's going every so often as a reward for ourselves for, doing the things that we need to do and finding the balance between the things that we want to do. The goal is to joy in moderation without guilt, because I think that's the biggest thing on all of these for these ideas, is that if we do them too much, then we feel shame and guilt that we're doing these things. Taking a short getaway. This is something that I have never done. And over the summer, I did this. And it was so healing for me. I cannot even describe for you how healing it was to like actually take a trip for myself. And I was very fortunate in that I didn't really have to pay for these trips. I actually took 2, and I didn't have to pay for them. And, it healed me so much in the pleasure sector and understanding of indulgence, that I plan on doing this more often for myself. I'm not going to hold back anymore and shame myself or guilt myself for doing something that I really enjoy, which is traveling, and something I haven't done for like 20 years. And it's something I want to do. And I'm going to do it more often. It's an indulgence. I'm not doing it all the time. I'm not doing it, every week or even every month. It's something that I am going to make a priority, though, to give myself that indulgence. So there are things I have to shift in order to make that a priority. The dangers we talked about, the dangers are overindulgence, guilt and shame for doing these things too much, dependency. When we use our indulgences as a coping mechanism, that's when we are doing the wrong thing, and then superego gets all upset, and id is like overjoyed because we're doing whatever the heck we want to do, right? So it's finding that balance. It's not using things as a coping mechanism, but using them as a reward for meeting a goal or doing the balance between the have to do's and the get to do's. And we got to make sure we're not neglecting our essential needs. So, again, that example of going out to eat all the time, or, going on trips all the time, and then we're ignoring our essential basic needs of paying our bills and, doing the essential things that we need to do for ourselves, like go to work because we're always on trips. We have to prioritize our life. We have to do things that we need to do in order so we can indulge later. How do we avoid these dangers? I think is a really important thing. Is, again, I've said it before, is the moderation is key. Moderation is key. It's not a daily habit, these little indulgences, it's balance. So, if we're talking about going out to eat or, using, going out for coffees or eating our favorite treats as an indulgence, we have to balance it with healthy habits. So we have to make sure that we're eating a balanced diet. All the other times we have to make sure that we're eating at home and eating home food and being okay with, having a sandwich for dinner instead of a 3-course meal at a restaurant. It's using mindfulness. We got to be mindful about the reasons for the indulgence. It's not a coping mechanism, which we've said. It's not a coping mechanism for negative feelings or ignoring things in our life that we don't want to deal with. And we do that by setting boundaries. We have to set boundaries. We have to establish limits. Like for my case in the travel sector is I really want to do these things, but I have to budget for it. Like I'm going to have a savings account that I put money aside from things that I'm doing and to have that. And I don't go until I have the money for it, or the opportunity comes where I don't have to spend a lot of money for it. And the last thing I think is that prioritization. Like I said, we have to prioritize our basic human needs first. We have to prioritize making sure that we're doing the things we need to do first. So we have to give in to superego a little bit and do what superego needs to do so that it gets rewarded. And ultimately so that our balanced ego is staying in check and we're not going one way or the other. We're not depriving ourselves and we're not overindulging ourselves. Okay, so challenge for you guys. The challenge is this. Identify where maybe you're giving into superego and identify maybe where you're giving into id. And figure out how maybe with these things, one thing for each, where you can find more balance in your life to indulge. If you are someone who doesn't indulge in yourself, this week I want you to choose one indulgence, something very small. And when you indulge, I want you to notice the feelings that you have about that indulgence. What are you feeling about that indulgence? And if the feelings of shame and guilt come up, I want you to speak to those and acknowledge them and tell them, thank you for keeping me safe. And then leave them there at the table. If you're at the coffee shop and you're having a coffee and you feel guilty about it, leave them there at the table, because guilt and shame do not belong in our lives. And we can have small indulgences without guilt and shame. I've been there and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to believe. Okay. Well, happy Monday. I hope this finds you well, and I hope this is very helpful for you. If it is, I'd love for you to share it with someone who you think maybe could learn about the importance of indulgences. Have a great Monday.